My channel is sponsored by Cook Unity, which means we'll have an ad from them somewhere in the middle of today's video.
I made this video that should be on screen somewhere right now back in February, and several hardware price hikes and a $1,000 Steam machine later, I knew this was coming. I just didn't think it would be this fast. That's what she said. But today, let's specifically talk about PlayStation and why they just did something that everyone hates, that they knew we would all hate, the enormous public backlash that has come from that, and why none of that backlash, no amount of public outrage or petitioning, will be able to change it. In case you missed it, PlayStation announced that they are ending physical disc production via a post on the PlayStation blog. It reads, as consumer preferences and the broader entertainment industry continue to shift away from physical discs to digital, physical game disc production for all new games releasing on PlayStation consoles will be discontinued starting January 2028. Following this date, new games will be available on PlayStation Store and at retailers in digital formats only. This is a natural direction for Sony Interactive Entertainment to adapt to consumer trends as the general preference for digital media significantly outpaces physical discs. This transition will enable us to align more closely with how most of our community prefers to access and play games today. On the exact same day, they also announced an update on the PlayStation Store for the PS3 and PS Vita. The second blog post reads, after nearly 2 decades of supporting the PS3 console generation, we wanted to let you know we will be closing the PlayStation Store on PS3 as well as on PS Vita. PlayStation Store on PS3 will close in select markets starting this year, followed by global closures for the PS3 and PS Vita next year. That means new content purchases will no longer be possible once the PlayStation Store closes on these devices. Truly a double hit on game preservation efforts, and I'm not going to talk about the various negatives here for too long, because I figure surely if you're interested in this topic, you've already seen the various reasons that it sucks real bad discussed extensively. I'm aware I'm late to this topic. Okay, I have to read through like 300 pages of earnings reports and investor statements to make these videos. It takes me a really long time, and YouTube's not my main job. It's not even technically my second job, so I'm always late, and I'm sorry. Give me a break. But I do want to quickly highlight some of them before we get into why they did this thing that we all hate and don't even care that we hate it, that's slightly more complex than people seem to think. Obviously, Sony is not wrong in saying that their customers are largely buying digital. Their last report says that only 3% of the company's sales are attributed to physical hardware. Physical game sales are down across the board. This is what people are voting for with their wallets, but at the same time, I just want to point out 3% is still a lot of people. That is millions of people. A study from the ERA, which is the Digital Entertainment and Retail Association, actually found that 25% of people under 25 still buy physical discs. But even if you aren't one of those people, there is still a bunch of ongoing kind of quiet value in physical distribution for Sony's customers. For one, of course, games that are delisted for any reason, this often happens when licenses for certain brands or music expire, will just no longer be accessible at all if we can't at least get physical versions. Not only may this include things that you have paid full price for, which is so anti-consumer that I don't understand how it's allowed. It's also just, I don't know, really sad to me in a way. Like, there might be games that you love, that you would love to share with people that you love, that can just be erased from existence. People who spent years and years and years of their lives working on these games may never be able to show them to their children. It's just, I don't know, not being able to share art that you love feels exceptionally soulless. So there's that. Sony actually does have a history of doing this as well. They recently delisted a long list of low-quality AI games, which, to be clear, is a move I'm actually in favor of, considering these are basically scams. But they've also done it with video content numerous times, taking down films and TV series that people may have paid full price for when licenses expired. It is something the industry does. It sucks. It's worse without physical even being a backup option. I would like to state here though, just among like a lot of the noise that I'm seeing, while this already always sucks, frequency of this has no reason to increase because of this decision. Sony does want games to remain available for purchase so they can keep getting their 30% cut from third-party publishers and indies unless there is some legal reason that they can no longer sell them. I don't think it's going to get worse as a result of this announcement. Basically, still sucks. But before we get to my actual biggest concern, I just want to mention there are also the many people who depend on the secondhand game market to actually take part in the hobby. I know that this side of the business is shrinking quite rapidly, but it is legitimately impactful for those who depend on it. I traded in almost every single game I played as a teenager, and I exclusively bought physical pre-owned copies because it's all I could afford with my like tiny McDonald's salary. Without that system, the hobby would have been very close to inaccessible to me. I genuinely cannot imagine how different my life would be if I couldn't buy pre-owned games as a kid. It's just really sad to think about. But yes, my actual biggest real concern is Monopoly. PlayStation PlayStation are removing competitors, being that this is obviously leading to the removal of physical disk drive to the PS6 entirely. They're making it so that every PlayStation game that you buy from PlayStation. This doesn't happen on PC. If you're not happy with Steam or you want to look for a sale, there are several other stores available. PlayStation have already been A/B pricing as well since November of 2025. This is where different people in the same region are shown two different prices so Sony can see which one sells more and then adjust prices accordingly. According to psprices.com, they did this with over 190 games in 70 plus regions, but it was actually largely focused on discounts, as in seeing if a discount would make people buy a game significantly more. This can easily lead to dynamic pricing though, where they realize some people might spend more for something than others and thus inflate their prices for that specific user based on their data. And I think just especially with Xbox making themselves less and less competitive as a platform, this just woof. Turns out healthily competing console manufacturers actually very good for consumers, and wanting one of them to win over the other was in fact always really fucking stupid. Obviously, I'm not alone in feeling extremely negatively about this. There has been a ton of backlash that sadly I just do not think is going to work. We'll get to that right after this word from today's sponsor. It is time to talk about Cook Unity. Cook Unity is a chef-to-you meal delivery platform. Their chefs make hundreds of fresh, never frozen meals delivered weekly in sustainable packaging. This is something I honestly feel like I might die without. I feel like I'm so often jumping between meetings in the chaos of a workday, so I just don't have the time to eat. And while I previously might have grabbed some unhealthy snack from my cupboard in a time of desperate hunger or not eaten at all, Cook Unity has changed all that. Their fresh restaurant quality meals arrive at the start of my work week, stacked neatly in my fridge, and are so easy to heat up and eat, even on the go. It's like fast food without any of the fast food hang-ups. The taste, the presentation, the food quality are all top notch. An extra touch I really love, they even tell you which chef specifically made your meal, which just adds to the authenticity. Oh my god. Okay, this one is definitely my favorite so far. A huge thank you to Chef John DeLucy for my incredible penne pasta. Delicious. It also just takes the time out of meal planning. I order online, picking from hundreds of diet-friendly dishes to suit a huge range of preferences, including keto, vegan, low sodium, high protein. The list goes on. So go to the link in the description right now to try Cook Unity and get 50% off your first order of chef-made meals delivered fresh to your door. That is 50% off your first order. Click the link in the description below and use my code Alanah50 to try it out. Thank you to Cook Unity for sponsoring the video. Now back to the video. So a bunch of companies have directly come out opposing Sony's choice here. I Am 8-Bit, Atari, Lost in Cult, Limited Run Games. Even Hideo Kojima said he was really sad. Won't somebody think of Hideo? The Video Game History Foundation specifically issued a statement touching on how this has been a losing battle for them for many, many years. It reads, "If platform owners are deciding to eliminate physical media and older digital storefronts, then we'd also like to see trade groups like the Entertainment Software Association offer meaningful solutions for archives and museums to legally preserve digital-only content and make it accessible for research." Everyone agrees this is a serious problem, but the ESA has repeatedly opposed the efforts of cultural heritage institutions to reform digital copy protection laws to make it easier to do this work. The industry needs to meaningfully come together to the table on this issue, because asking museums to download a copy of Grand Theft Auto 6 and hope that it'll run in 50 years is not a preservation solution. Which, yes, totally agree. There are also a number of organizations that are actively preparing lawsuits. The Dutch nonprofit has filed a 400 million euro class action lawsuit against Sony, specifically arguing that eliminating discs removes competition, thus enabling what they call the Sony tax, which is the 30% sales commission I mentioned earlier. Their intent is to build on top of previous lawsuits Sony has already faced. In the UK, there's a £2 billion class action lawsuit called PlayStation You Owe Us that's going to trial this year. That is also specifically targeting Sony's 30% cut and their monopoly on digital pricing. And there is a US case called PSN Digital Game Settlement, in which Sony has already agreed to pay $7.85 million to resolve antitrust claims in the digital game market. So it's not just public backlash, it's also legal, professional backlash in an area that they've already been very heavily scrutinized. Obviously, we don't know how these cases will go. I did initially have some hope that the European Union, who are generally pretty good about helping with consumer protections, might be able to stop this. Worth noting, they were not able to help with the recent Stop Killing Games movement, which was very expected, but admittedly still a huge bummer. But they have had some successes in giant regulatory battles files against Apple, in which the EU posits that Apple has been acting as a gatekeeper regarding a number of facets of their digital sales. Sadly, an EU commissioner told the European Parliament earlier this week that there isn't anything they can do about this particular one. The commissioner said, "It does come down to commercial and contractual freedoms, and companies are free to offer games and services in the manner that they see fit, provided that consumer rights are fully protected in line with national and EU law." There is also a change.org petition up currently at the time that I'm filming this, just over 300,000 signatures. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you would like to sign it, though again, I do not think petitioning and public backlash will work here at all. That's no reason not to do it, but Sony already knew everyone would be pissed off. They knew this. People working at PlayStation first-party studios told me that Sony had the strictest social media guidelines for this particular thing that they've ever seen issued. Sony does somewhat regularly tell employees what they can or can't say about certain things. I was under a lot of guidelines when I was working on God of War Lao Fei. I still am. And they did send me guidelines regarding what I could say on the day that the game was announced. But in this instance, it is apparently the strictest the employees I spoke to have ever seen regarding public communications. They would only have done this if they knew it was going to be an enormous PR issue. This is no surprise to them. So why is it worth it? While Sony obviously do get a bigger cut when you buy something from them directly, they don't have to eat the costs of physical production and distribution for something that they sell for the same amount. So they make about 50% more revenue from a game they sell digitally. Digital sales are already up and consistently growing in market share versus physical. They didn't really need to force the market on this one. And while direct revenue is great, yay for making more money, it is not an insignificant amount of money. This is just about so much more than that. It's about future-proofing and Sony's current long-term strategy. It is especially important that they show investors right now that they are working real hard on this long-term strat because Sony's in a kind of dire spot. They've been down by about 19% on the stock market. To be totally clear, I always want to shout this kind of thing from the rooftops when it comes to conversations about the games industry failing or whatever. Sony's games division is very financially healthy. They are very profitable. They had a great year in terms of sales. They had a company record operating income of 463.3 billion yen for the last financial year. That's a 12% year-on-year increase and their highest annual revenue ever. They are making a lot of money. Their games are still selling, but on the stock market, they are down by about 19%. This is bad. Obviously, the entire games industry is struggling on the stock market right now for a number of reasons. I have a super extensive video about that up on my channel already. If you would like to watch it, I'll leave a link in the description. And there are three very big parts of that directly influence PlayStation. The first is not really solvable. That is the mature market problem. Mature market is what investors call any industry that has passed its rapid growth phase. This basically means that vast majority of potential customers are already using the product. There aren't any more would-be gamers for the industry to recruit, so there's no more obvious growth to be had, thus investors are pivoting to industries that do have more obvious opportunities for growth, like AI. There is very little solution to this particular problem. Without inventing some insane new version of like microtransactions, there's nothing that the games industry can really do about this one. The other two, which are the chip shortage and engagement hours, are a bit more solvable, and the diskless future contributes here. I mean, after the announcement was made, Sony's stocks climbed by 7%. It was, despite all of our outrage, a significant success. A success that is, again, much larger than just, oh, some extra revenue from an already dying part of the industry. Then why did this announcement work so well? Let's start with the chip shortage problem, and the solution here is probably not actually what you think. In case you missed my earlier videos about this, the next generation of consoles, of computer game hardware in general, is in a ton of trouble because they need computer chips, and the AI industry is buying up all of said chips in order to put them in data centers. Because supplies are so limited, and Sony and Nintendo specifically have not presented strong enough answers to this obvious problem, they are getting pushback from shareholders. Investors are concerned about their ability to navigate the shortage with hardware manufacturing going forward. So am I. This hardware has become so egregiously expensive that there is no way the PS6 can come in under $1,000, especially with Sony coming out and saying they don't want to operate at a loss. How do you fix this problem? Well, you could shut down your disc manufacturing plant, which was making about 600,000 discs per day, and turn it into an optical microlens fabricating facility. You know what they use optical microlenses for? AI data centers. Sony has invested 30 million EU in this project. Stock market go yay! Sony also recently announced a joint venture with TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, who is the world's largest contract chip maker. It is considered a critical supplier for AI accelerators. This doesn't necessarily solve the chip shortage problem insofar as PlayStation specifically are concerned, but it does show investors that Sony is in the game in a position to profit from the huge demand for chip production, rather than just in a position to lose money because they can't manufacture consoles as easily anymore. They have also come forward, like every other company in the goddamn space, and spoken about their plans to integrate generative AI into game development. You know how I mentioned the mature market problem earlier? Mentioning Gen AI is one small appeasement for this. You get to tell investors you're working with this new tech that changes everything. We don't even know the limits of this amazing new tech and what it might do for our games. The future is limitless. It's not, it sucks ass. Every game developer I know absolutely hates it, but stock market, again, go yay! Second problem, engagement. Right now, every entertainment industry is competing with social media in terms of user engagement and losing to TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Reels. These things are all designed to keep you watching for as long as possible, and that's time people are spending not playing video games. The games industry needs to win that time back, and with that, investor confidence. This is a huge focus for PlayStation. Looking through their reports, they are laser focused on monthly active users and total gameplay hours. They have openly told investors they're committed to making live service games even after failures like Concord. They canceled PC ports. They've made a lot of decisions people hate because they're all chasing the same thing, keeping players inside of the PlayStation ecosystem for as long as possible. Getting rid of the part where the consumer goes to the store to buy a physical disc contributes to that. More time for PlayStation. There can only be PlayStation. In sort of optimistic news, even with their doubling down on live service games, PlayStation does still have a huge commitment to high-quality single-player games. Not only do their single-player games coax people into that ecosystem, it's also just building up the multimedia aspect of the brand. They are very happy with their film and TV adaptation stuff and are also investing tons in music right now, which is very indicative of where I think we're headed. Do you remember that Don Matrick Xbox E3 conference everyone hated?
Introducing Xbox One. TV and movies, TV.
I think that's exactly what Sony is trying to do right now. Their long-term strat is to turn PlayStation Plus into a service that gives you access to TV, movies, music, and of course, video games. All PlayStation, all the time. In fact, even though they posted that cute little video of them passing the disc, which, man, did that age poorly?
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
I'm quite sure Sony execs would have loved to do this back then. It feels like the games industry has just been waiting for us to be okay with it, to be more on board with an all-digital, all-subscription service future. This is, of course, also a direct path to the inevitable cloud streaming focus, where we stream games from a much smaller PlayStation box or from an app or something. Same shit Microsoft has been trying to do with their This Is an Xbox program, which gamers also hate it. I actually don't doubt that Sony's PR and marketing teams might have wanted to wait a little longer before having to drop this news. I think they figured that consumers would get more and more comfortable with digital only, with subscriptions, with cloud streaming, and that we would eventually just wholly accept this future without any pushback. And we're actually kind of not that far off. Obviously, socially, there's plenty of pushback, but I do think that people are pretty financially accepting of this. I hope that I am wrong. I would love to go back to the era where I put a disc in and it played a video game without any downloads, Jesus Christ. But I actually don't think that Sony will see consumer spending go down as a result of this news. People are financially supportive of this. People are largely buying games digitally, even if they say physical means a lot to them. So it's kind of like, considering the state of things on the stock market and the beginning of a new financial year and the lead up to new consoles in this PlayStation Plus ecosystem, I suspect they're going to start to unveil at some point, they made the decision to finally pull the plug. It's kind of like, well, it's as good a time as any to do this thing we've probably been wanting to do for a decade. Fuck it. Let them be mad. And let me be very clear. Explaining the business logic behind this does not mean that I agree with it. I don't. I hate it. But understanding why they're doing this is important because it explains why no amount of public backlash can change it. Sony believes this is necessary for its long-term strategy, and investors rewarded it the moment it became public, which is the part where I tap the sign. The games industry's real customer is the stock market, not the gamer.
PlayStation.